Hello, good people, and welcome to Finest Skills Hub. Here we learn, we connect, and we grow. Pivot tables in Excel are very, very important when it comes to analyzing and summarizing data. But did you know that if you created data models from the data that you work with, there are a lot more options for you. In Excel, we create data models in Power Pivot. It's a very powerful feature. Maybe you have not used it before. In this short video, I'm going to give you 3 key reasons why using Power Pivot is a bit more effective when it comes to analyzing data. Stay on for number 3. I'm sure you're going to be excited by that. So if you're game, pick up your tools, join me in Excel, and let's go through this together. Okay, so we are going to start off with this data, regular sales data. I have 2 worksheets. One contains transactions, your order date, customer ID, store ID, quantity, revenue, and cost. The table is named transactions. Then on the second sheet, you have 3 tables. One for customer details, the other for location details, and then the other for product details. All these have been named respectively. Right. Now, to help you compare how to analyze data with regular pivot tables and how you analyze it with pivot tables and data models, I have duplicated this workbook. Okay, so we'll be switching back and forth to see the difference. Right. So let's look at the first one. Now, if I start here and I want to analyze with pivot tables, because the table, I'll just insert a pivot table right away. Okay, I'll put this pivot table in a new worksheet. So when I do this, I have access to my pivot table field list. Right, with pivot tables, we have the value section, which normally contains the column that has numbers. So as an example, I'll put in revenue here, right? And then use any of the attributes to break down by row or by column. Okay, now you'll notice that when it comes to breaking down this number, all we have are ID columns, not a lot of details here. So as an example, if I drag customer ID here, all I have are numbers. Okay, the details for the IDs are locked up in this sheet or tables. So to know the customer name, to know the location, the product category, and so on, it appears that I have to get those columns into the original table that I created this from. Okay, so again, without Power Pivot, what you need to do is probably do a lookup and then bring the details that you need in the table that you started from. Right, so I'll insert and then probably call this customer name. Okay, and then maybe do a VLOOKUP index match or X lookup. So I'll do an X lookup. The lookup value is my customer ID. Okay, I'm going into the table called customer, match this with customer ID, column that I need, or the return column, or the return array. Okay, it's going to be customer name, right? So with XLOOKUP, I can now get the details of the customer. Okay, now if I do this and I go back to my pivot table and then I refresh, okay, now customer name is part of the table, right? I can now add customer name to this, take off customer ID. Okay, without Power Pivot, you probably always have to go back and forth to always insert the details that you need if they exist in another table. Right, now let's see how easy it is if you are using Power Pivot to achieve this. Okay, so the same data, okay, but now instead of going ahead with my pivot table, what I'm going to do is when I insert the pivot table, okay, I can add this to the data model, right? So this makes the difference. Right. Another way you could do this is that you could directly lift all the tables into Power Pivot. Now, Power Pivot has to be added in. Okay, it doesn't come by default. So in my case, you see that Power Pivot is up here. If you are using this for the first time, you can enable it by coming to Data. Right, in the Data Tools group, you click on Go to the Power Pivot window. It would activate it for the first time. Open the Power Pivot environment. Then you can close it after and then use it. Okay, right. So this is how you activate Power Pivot. When you're in the Power Pivot view, you get the option to add all the tables to your data model. right? So the first option or this one. So if I stand in a table, I can add this to the data model. Okay, so this allows me to use the features in Power Pivot. Okay, so if I come here, I can add this one to the data model. Okay, and then repeat the process for the last two. Add this to the data model, and finally we'll add this to the data model. Now by doing this, you have all your tables in one place. Okay, now this is the Power Pivot environment, right? So you have your home, design, and then advanced tools, right? So this initial display gives me the data view, but if I switch to the diagram view, right, you notice that I now have a visual of all the tables that are present in my workbook. Okay, so usually to avoid that manual process of looking up the information, we need to relate the data or connect them, right? So if I take any of these tables, example, if I take customer and transactions, common column for my lookup will be the customer ID. Okay, so I'll connect this. This table now becomes a dimension table to give me further and better details of my calculation. This is my fact table where I create my calculations from, or where I record my main transactions. Okay, if I want to connect this to store ID, same process. I'll take this and then bring it here and then connect my product ID also here. Okay, so here the data still is in the shape and form that I started with. I don't have to distort, but I can create a pivot table right from here. Okay, so I'll just insert a pivot table into a new worksheet. Okay, now this pivot table, instead of giving me just the columns in the original table, I have access to all the 4 tables. Okay, so if I'm analyzing and I want to analyze revenue, okay, if I bring revenue, I have access to the customer table, okay, and then choose customer name to break this down with. Okay, so again, when it comes to analyzing data from multiple tables, this works. Instead of using regular formulas, you can just link the tables and then do your analysis across all the tables that you have, right? So that's reason number 1, the ability to analyze from multiple tables smoothly. Now, let's go back to the sheet. So if I come back to this sheet, you realize that I have a column for order date. Okay, so order date allows me to break down my analysis by date. So as an example, I can swap customer name, okay, and then bring in my date here. So if I bring in my dates, usually I get some different date attributes. Okay, now these date attributes can be in years, it can be in quarters, it can be in months, order date, and so on. Okay, now I can reorder these date columns. So as an example, I can take off quarters. Okay, so that I'm left with just months. I can expand in here and I see my months. Okay, while it is like this, I can take, let's say, years to columns. Okay, so that my columns are above and then broken down on the row level by month. Okay, so I have something like this. So with regular pivot tables, we can play with the different date attributes that we are given, right? But you can't do anything more than what you've been given. So the generic year, quarter, but if I do this with data models, I can manipulate all the date attributes to fit what I'm looking for. All right, so let's see how this works. Now, if I go back to our data model version, remember this is already in the data model, right? So if I want to go back to the Power Pivot environment, right, I now have the tab activated here. So I go to manage. Okay, this brings me to this part. Now in the environment under design, okay, I have the option to create a dedicated date table. Okay, this is a bit more detailed, so I can create it automatically. It just scans the column that has my dates and then create a series of dates from start point to the end point. Right now, you notice that the moment I create this new table, right, in my visual view or the schema, I have my calendar table present here. Okay, so now my calendar table can be part of the action. Okay, so I'll bring this here and then connect it to my original transactions table, my fact table. Okay, so I have something like this, right? This is also present when I come to the data view. Okay, so if I come to the data view, I now see a more detailed date table, right? So from here, I can create different combinations of the date that I'm looking for. You realize that aside the generic date attributes, month, year, and quarter, and so on, I have a combination of month and year. Okay, I can add extra columns if I want by just calculating from the original date value. Now let's see how this impacts our pivot table. So I'm going to close this. Now you'll notice that if I come here and I go to all my tables, I now have this new calendar over here with a date hierarchy, right? I can drop this, or I can come in here and then use the specific date attributes that I'm looking for. Okay, so let's try and create what we had earlier. I'm going to take off the customer name, okay, and then put the month name over here, right, and then put the year across like this, right? This is smooth. Okay, now what I can do is that, let's say I don't even like this display. Okay, I want to use the combination of the month and then the year. Okay, so I'll take off this and then bring in this one. I have April 2018, April 2019 together going all the way down. Now with the data model or in Power Pivot, this is not arranged chronologically, right? It's using it as a text column, so it arranges it alphabetically, right? I can go and then create a column to sort this properly. So if I go back to my Power Pivot, okay, here I can now generate a new column. Okay, so let's call this new column year month. So I'm standing in the formula bar, so I'll call this year month. Okay, so when you start year month, you bring a colon and equal to. Okay, then you proceed with your formula. So basically, I want to take the year column, multiply this by a placeholder 10,000, okay, and then add this to the month number. Okay, so this is going to give me something that I can sort or arrange my month year combination with. Now, if I come to that column, okay, I can now sort it by, so I'll sort by the year month column that I just created, and then I'll click OK. Okay, so the expectation now is that if I close this and then I go back, you realize that I have more options now. I have my January all the way to 2018 in one set, and then it's followed by January, December 2019, right? So in doing a particular visual, I now have the option to have all my month year combination in one column if I like, right? So that's reason number 2. We have a flexible date table that we can create different date attributes from for our visuals or calculations. Now let's go to the final one. So I want to just say create a calculation, like an example, year on year percentage change. Okay, and I want this present in my pivot table. For starters, let me take off my grand total. So I just want to see the year on year growth rate. Okay, now in pivot tables, there's a way we can get this done. Okay, so what you need to do is, for the value that you are interested in, you bring it in the value section for a second time. Okay, so if you like, you can even name this year on year growth. Okay, so this is what we are going to use, and an original revenue is here. So if I come to the year on year growth, I can right click and then show the values as, right, a percentage difference from. Okay, so this, I'm going to use the base field, okay, as my year, and then the base item is going to be previous. Okay, so when I do this, I now have a calculation of the percentage difference between the 2 years. Now, because 2018 is our first column, okay, we don't have a year-on-year growth for that one, so we normally hide that one, and then we have something like this. Okay, now this one is an implicit measure. Okay, it's just taking the shape of the pivot table to create these numbers. But if we don't create the shape, we cannot have access to this calculation. That is the challenge with using pivot tables when you are creating some of these measures. right? But when we go to the data model option, we can create the same calculation, okay, but have access to it to create different versions in our visual or final calculation. Let's see how we do this. Now, when you create a data model, it allows you to create something we call measures. Okay, so with measures, you can use it in your calculations, in your charts, and all those things. So let's go in and create the same calculation as a new measure. Okay, so I'll come in here. The measure name is going to be year-on-year growth. Same thing that we did. Okay, so if you're regular with structured referencing calculations in Excel, DAX, data analysis expressions, is similar to our calculations in Excel, but it has more powerful functions. Okay, so the logic here is that we are going to sum first the transactions table, okay, the revenue that we have in there, okay, and then divide this, okay, by calculate. So calculate allows you to modify your calculation, okay, using a filter, right? So if I throw in the same calculation, sum transactions revenue, okay, I'll close this. Okay, I can put in a filter. So that filter is going to be a function called same period last year. Okay, so same period last year, and then I'll just give it my calendar date table. Okay, so when I do this and I close this, my calculate, and then subtract 1 from here, right? This is going to give me the year-on-year growth rates. So I check my formula. Here, I can even set this as a percentage right here. Okay, so if I now click OK, so you notice that in the first year, there's no growth. So I have some errors here, but in the second year, it's able to calculate my year-on-year growth rate comparing the current year with the previous, right? Just as with regular formulas, I can go in and then edit my DAX calculations. All this is possible in Power Pivot. So if I come here, I can manage this, come edit, okay, this is the original calculation. I'll just simply wrap an if error around this. Okay, so put in an empty string in the original one. Formula is still fine. When I click OK, okay, it just cleans this up for me. Okay, now this is very, very important because if let's say I'm doing a calculation, right, and I just need to grab for some particular months. Okay, so if I take off the rows from here, and then let's say I bring in for region, okay, in this row section, okay, now you notice that I can now have access to the year-on-year growth rates for region. So in our earlier pivot table version, I would have to manipulate the shape to be able to get access to this. Okay, now the good thing about using your data model is that if I want to, let's say, grab this particular year-on-year growth rate for a particular region, okay, I can even bring it into a cell directly using cube functions. A very simple way to grab this. So if you pay attention to, let's say, the Eastern region, okay, I can come in here, use cube value, okay, go to my data model, right, and then I have access to my measures. Okay, so in my measures, the year-on-year growth rates is over here, right? Now I can now go and then choose which region that I'm interested in. So for the region, I can state that I am interested in just the Eastern region. Okay, and then close it from here. Okay, so you notice that even without the pivot table, I still can pull the measure that I'm interested in, break it down by region, and then get the specific region that I'm interested in. Even in this view, okay, I can still add a slicer, okay, to any of these attributes here. Okay, so I can add a slicer over here. So I have 2018 and 2019, okay, to even get a more specific calculation for each of the years. Okay, so all these are possible because I use the data model in Excel. So if you want to analyze data across multiple tables without affecting the structure of the table, you want more options with your date table, and then you want the option to use explicit measures in your calculations, then you would have to use Power Pivot. There are a lot more advantages with Power Pivot. In fact, it allows you to even use data beyond the capacity of a regular Excel worksheet. So you have data that has, let's say, 10 million rows. Right from your Power Query, you can hold it in a data model and then do your calculations, right? So hopefully, if you have any of these challenges, please activate the Power Pivot and then use it in your calculation. So if you really want to use more of these features, Power Query, Power Pivot, DAX, pivot tables, slices, I cover all these in my book, Data Modeling with Excel. Okay, so you go through a practical case study right from your raw data set to building a very interactive dashboard. It's available in Ghana if you want a hard copy, but if you want to buy online, the link has been shared in there. Go to Amazon, grab a copy, and then practice along. Thank you so much for joining us, and then see you in the next video.
If this video was helpful and you would like to receive more of these videos directly on your WhatsApp, you can send ad to this WhatsApp number. We'll add you to our broadcast list so you receive our videos directly. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Finance Skills Hub. All our old videos are here. Please subscribe for notification of new videos, or connect with us on any of these social media handles. Thank you so much for watching.